Russia is attempting to play its own intimidation game under the weight of crippling economic sanctions. They're threatening to deorbit the International Space Station and bring it down to Earth. How were they going to follow through on this ridiculous threat? What areas would be most vulnerable to a collision? What does all of this signify for space exploration in the future? This is So What, and this is what would happen if Russia were to wreck the International Space Station. At an altitude of around 400 kilometers above the Earth's surface, the ISS orbits. The longest spacecraft ever constructed is 109 meters in length from end to end. It stretches the length of a football field, including its solar panels. It's the size of a 5-bedroom house and can hold up to 11 astronauts. If it weren't for the 15 nations who banded together to build and operate the station, it would not exist. Getting all of the station's nodes and modules off the ground and into orbit was a collaborative effort involving 5 different space agencies. Its time in orbit, on the other hand, may be limited. Dmitry Rogozin, the Director General of Roscosmos, tweeted, "Who will preserve the ISS from an uncontrollable deorbit into the United States or Europe if you refuse to cooperate with us?" The 500-ton structure might also be shipped to India and China. Is it possible for Russia to take control of the International Space Station and turn it into a death trap? The threat, as ominous as it may sound, isn't entirely implausible. Russia could even be able to do it without the help of the station's cosmonauts. Without Roscosmos' assistance, significant alterations to the ISS orbital schedule are now impossible. 2 unmanned Russian Progress supply ships, or a Zvezda service module, can make these alterations. The ISS would be on its own if these critical orbital changes weren't made. The station and the cosmonauts on board would be at risk of colliding with massive volumes of debris orbiting the Earth. The thrusters on these devices, which are normally used to distribute supplies and fuel or make repairs, may, on the other hand, be used to shoot the ISS out of orbit. The Russians, on the other hand, would not put their own cosmonauts in jeopardy. Right? Do not believe it. Russian anti-satellite missiles were tested on one of its own satellites in November 2021. All ISS crew members were put in danger as they had to prepare for collisions with the large volumes of debris created by the explosion. So, now that you've put your doubts aside, it's time to gaze up. Have you noticed anything light traveling across the sky and becoming larger? You might mistake this for a comet speeding across the sky, trailed by a trail of bright gas. The sheer splendor of this scene would astound you, until you discover it's the International Space Station, IS, approaching you. India, China, the United States, and much of Europe are all passed by the International Space Station, IS. As a result, many portions of the world would be at risk of being affected. In this instance, though, Russia would have no need to be concerned about self-harm. Dense titanium, KEVLAR, and high-grade steel are used to construct the station. However, the high heat and pressure in the atmosphere may cause it to disintegrate. You'll see flaming eruptions of glitter and blinding light when that gets started. This would be lovely as well as a harbinger of good things to come. The station's dismantling could have a bigger impact on the ground. The consequences, on the other hand, would be far less severe than if it stayed in place. Imagine a perfectly intact space station crashing into cities like Los Angeles, London, or Hong Kong. A crater almost 1,300 meters wide and 470 meters deep would be left behind. The subsequent explosive fireball would kill or badly burn anyone who was close to the crash location. A magnitude 6 earthquake could be triggered by the impact. Thousands or perhaps millions of people could perish depending on where the strike occurred. Thousands of people could be killed or relocated as a result of the devastation. Many space agencies' ties would be jeopardized if all of this went down. And losing our only space laboratory, which is now in orbit, would be a major setback for space research in the future. If there is a silver lining, it is that this type of maneuver could take years to play out. Hopefully, NASA and other organizations will have ample time to respond. Perhaps they could direct it to the spacecraft cemetery on Point Nemo, the farthest point on Earth from land. The ISS is scheduled to retire and plummet to this location in 2031, therefore this would be little earlier than intended. Using the International Space Station as a weapon would be a disaster that would put millions of people at danger. However, unleashing a nuclear weapon would do the same thing. So what is a tale in itself?